Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Thursday edition of the show. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday, and also a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your farming neighbors, whoever's interested in agriculture, tell them about RealAg Radio. You know, for more than 90 years, Pioneer has developed and tested products to meet your local challenges. With new Optimum Glide canola, Enlist E3 soybeans, to performing corn products and industry-leading traits and technologies to maximize your yield potential, Pioneer's on-the-ground teams can help you get the right products for your fields. And the key there is your fields. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more. And a big shout out to Pioneer Seeds Canada for being the sponsor of the Farmer Rapid Fire. And speaking of the Farmer Rapid Fire, we got some great farmers lined up today, 4 in total. We're going to talk to Jeff Harrison. He's in Quinte, West Ontario. We got Emery Huszka, who's in Lambton, Ontario. Scott Hepworth is in Assiniboia, Saskatchewan. And Aubrey Yule is in Killarney, Manitoba. So we got a great list, and looking forward to chatting with all of them. We got a number of different condition situations in each of those areas. So I think we're going to get a pretty broad brush of responses in terms of how crop conditions are. And I'm a little bit interested in a couple things this week. One, maybe I'll ask some of them the reaction to Lawrence McCauley being the new ag minister, follow up on that again. And also I'm a little bit interested in how you line out your harvest crew. What does that look like? Harvest, a lot of times we think about it, the long hours. You know, there's the expense of the combines nowadays, and just, you know, fighting the weather. But the reality is that it's an exercise in logistics. It is trying to organize people and machines against the variable that Mother Nature presents us with, and really what the quality of the crop is, to try to do it as efficiently and productively as we possibly can. I find it quite fascinating, and everybody looks at it a little bit different. All the roles are different on a harvest crew, but they're all very, very important. So I like hearing how farmers do that. And so I always find it very, very fascinating. Want to remind you can subscribe to the RealAgriculture.com free e-newsletters. All you got to do is go to RealAgriculture.com/subscribe, and then that'll take you to basically you can check off a box of all the different free e-newsletters that we send out on a daily basis. Cattle, dairy, machinery, Western Canada, Eastern Canada. There's a whole bunch there. Make sure you check that out. That is RealAgriculture.com/subscribe. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to get started with the Farmer Rapid Fire. We're going to start in Ontario and work our way west. And we'll do that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
When it comes to the productivity and efficiency of your operation, every decision counts. One of those decisions is how you fuel your equipment. You need to be sure that it will run efficiently and without unnecessary downtime. Count on Co-op and your local Co-op fuel team to keep your equipment running smoothly with seasonally blended high-quality fuels and premium lubricants with guaranteed performance. We are Western Canadian. We are fueling harvest. We are Co-op.
The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to get your crop off to a great start and a strong finish. Whether you're growing chickpeas, fava beans, lentils, or peas, you'll get all the latest and best agronomic information at PulseSchool.com. A library of top-notch agronomy videos from industry experts available on demand at your fingertips. Visit The Pulse School, brought to you by BASF on RealAgriculture.com.
This year might bankrupt us. If I lose the farm, I'm letting down generations of my family. Why am I the only one who can't handle it? Maybe the farm would be better off without me. Hello?
Hey, I was just thinking about you and thought I'd say hi. I know it's been a hard season, and I wanted to see how you're holding up.
We might feel alone, but we're all in this together. Visit domore.ag for mental health supports tailored for the agriculture community.
And we start off this week's Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada in Quinte, West Ontario. We're talking to Jeff Harrison. Hey, Jeff, how are you doing?
Doing great, Shaun. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, good to chat with you, too. So what's happening this week on the farm? What are you up to?
Well, we're trying to desperately get our winter wheat done. We've been harvesting now for, it seems like, an eternity. We've had, we've been blessed with some wet weather in July, which we all should be very thankful for because it has made great corn and soybean crops out there. But it has been a real challenge to get our wheat harvested, and we can see the finish line today, and it's going to rain tomorrow. So we are desperately trying to get this wheat done.
Are you losing quality?
Well, we've been pretty lucky here in the Middle Eastern part of the province. We had some really high falling numbers, and I'm sure that they have declined a bit as harvest has dragged on. But because they were high initially, I think we're still really good. And I haven't seen any dockage or issues as far as that goes, and I haven't heard of others. So yeah, we're lucky.
And how about from a yield standpoint? Has that wheat surprised you at all?
You know what? It suffered a little bit in the spring because we did have a very dry, cold spring, and we went maybe a little bit too long without moisture. So I think it did. I know it did take some top-end yield off the wheat, but still a very good crop and a crop we should be thankful for. Definitely, I would say on my own farm, an above-average yielding crop.
Okay, so let's park the wheat for a second. Let's talk about the corn and beans. How are they looking?
I don't possibly know how they could look any better. And I know.
Whoa, really?
Abnormal. I know that's abnormal for a farmer. Usually we can always find something to complain about. But crops look good, Shaun. They really do. I know in the western part of the province, they've probably in areas had too much rain and maybe even hurt some crops. But right here, where we farm, we've been getting really lucky, getting a good amount of moisture and enough heat. The crops look good.
That's good to hear. I like that, Jeff. You're right. We can, but you know what? Here's the thing. We got to get it through the combine yet, right? So there.
No, it isn't over yet, is it? No, mature. We're no more than far enough along as far as maturity. We're going to need a good September to end up with some good heavy corn with reasonable moistures. We're going to need a good September to cooperate with us, but I don't think we're too far behind. The crop is so lush that I'm sure, fungicides are going to be important. And for those of us maybe that didn't spray fungicide on the beans, maybe we're going to end up wishing we did. Because it's a pretty dense canopy out there. And so, yeah, it's not done with. But right now, if you want an analysis on what the crop looks like, it looks good. It looks good.
Okay, well, that's good. So we got the crop growing well and harvest with wheat underway, as long as Mother Nature would cooperate a little bit and back off on some of the moisture. What are you doing from a marketing standpoint? Have you been kind of sitting on the sidelines on 23 crop marketing the corn and beans, or are you being aggressive? What are you doing?
Well, I would say I've done the usual amount of mistakes. No more mistakes than normal, but I have filled my quota of mistakes. I certainly don't have enough sold. I probably didn't have enough sold with a normal crop. And as your crop increases, that just increases your of crops sold. I have bins on the farm. I've always been a guy that likes to know what I have before I get too aggressive as far as contracting. Is that always the right move? No, I would never advocate to anyone to do it like me, but I just do it my way. But no, I wish these prices were not going in the direction that they are going. That's for sure. And the weather that we've had here in Ontario, it's put more yield in any reason why not continue to erode. There's going to be a bigger crop out there in Ontario.
Yeah. What do you think happens with basis then in Ontario?
Well, I guess a big crop. I would assume we're going to be looking to export as much as we can so that we're not flooded with this. I would think just from a simple standpoint, so we got a place to put all this corn, let alone the big crop of wheat, given there's a record wheat acres in the province. So, yeah, my friend, the grain merchandiser, would say that basis moves grain. So I can't see. I mean, there's all kinds that no one knows and no one can foresee, but I can't see a big crop being positive to or long the basis.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jeff, you follow the happenings of what's going on outside of the gates of the farm. What would you say for the Ontario cash cropper is like the top of mind issue right now? What's when you're talking to some of your buds, what comes up a lot?
Well, I would think, given my role at the Grain Farmers of Ontario and representing grain farmers in this province, I would have to answer that with of course, the impacts of government relations on us, regulations rather.
Yeah.
Whether it's the carbon tax or fertilizer issues or fertilizer tariffs, or the war in Ukraine and the grain deal impacting our prices. All of those have a huge impact on the Ontario grain farmer. I mean, I know marketing and production and all the work that goes into farming is so important and crucial, but all those other factors have such an impact on farmers' bottom line, their mental health, the next generation's interest in wanting to be a farmer. Those are government regulation, I would have to say, would be front and center as far as the impacts on an Ontario grain farmer.
What was your reaction last week to seeing that Lawrence McCauley is back for round 2 as the ag minister?
I view it as a positive. Madame Bibeau did a good job. She represented her party well. There are no doubt things that we would have liked to see the government and decision makers do differently in respect to the commodities that we represent in agriculture. But change is good, and it will bring new dialogue, new perspective, reasons to talk to the minister, and we're going to view it as a positive because there's just no other way other than to look positive towards the future and hopefully always being able to get something done for farmers. Yeah,
we were just talking, some of the things you brought up there were federal, more relation sort of stuff. It's been kind of quiet from the Ontario government. What's the relationship right now between farmers and the province?
Well, I can tell you the grain farmers of Ontario have a great relationship with Minister Lisa Thompson and her assistants, or deputy ministers rather. And we've been able to have good dialogue with the provincial Conservatives. They've had an open door policy. They've listened to us. There are some other farm groups that aren't necessarily an advocate for the provincial government, given some land use planning. But, we have maybe differentiated ourselves because I was just at a meeting where they wanted to start an initiative to preserving farmland. And, good farmland in our province is so very crucial, not only to production agriculture, but of course, that's where a lot of our urban development is. But I told them we have to look at both sides, Shaun. When it comes to government, they're not our enemy. They're trying to solve a housing crisis in our province, all the while trying to look after agriculture. So I think our provincial Conservatives are doing a good job. Are they perfect? Is any level of government perfect? No, but I certainly support them and have thought that they have done a good job for us.
Hey, Jeff, thanks a lot for joining us here this week on the Farmer Rapid Fire. All the best to you during harvest, and we'll check in with you a little bit later on, okay?
Yeah, great. Always good to talk to you, Shaun. Thanks.
We'll be back with more of the Farmer Rapid Fire here on RealAg Radio, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
Does your N stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca.
As you head out into the field this season, the Corn School's got you covered. Everything from tillage discussions, weed control info, field trial results, yield strategies, and more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Pride Seeds, BASF, and Syngenta Canada.
And we continue the Farmer Rapid Fire, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Make sure you go to pioneer.com/Canada to find out more. Our next stop is Lambton, Ontario. We're talking to Emery Huszka. Hey, Emery, how are you doing?
How we doing, Shaun? It's nice to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, you're sitting on the porch, you're looking out, and what are you seeing? How are things?
Well, I'm seeing a tale of two farming. We've got some farmers with big smiles and some pulling their hair out. We've had more rain this year than many seasons that I can remember. So if you have wheat still standing in the field, you are not on the happy side of the equation.
Yeah. Do you have wheat out still in the field?
I don't, but I've talked to a number of friends that are trying. One still had over a couple hundred acres, which isn't much for out west, but by our standards, that's a frightening amount to deal with.
Yeah. And some people, Peter Johnson was telling us about some declining quality, issues with falling number, things like that. So,
some of the earliest wheat that came off though was very good. The yield was decent and the weight was decent. So it's like everything else in farming, right? Wait and see what we're going to end up with at the end.
Yeah, Mother Nature always plays a role. We got areas of the country, Emery, that are drier than a bone, and we got areas of the country where it won't stop raining. It's just like, why can't we not even this stuff out a little bit? It would be just way simpler.
I look at it like this, Shaun. 15 of the last 20 years, my little area of the county was pretty dry, and we prayed like heck for rain. We just got it all at once. That's all.
Yeah, that's why the averages are dangerous, right?
Put it in perspective. I've got roughly 15 inches of rain between the time I planted at the end of April to now. And there's other years that we've had 2 inches of rain from the time we planted till the 1st of September.
Yeah.
So, and there are people that had more than that. There's some that are getting close to 20 inches now, cumulative.
Be growing rice before you know it.
They have, actually, down at Mitchell's Bay a couple of years ago, so.
Yeah. How about your crops? How are they looking?
The corn, I don't want to jinx it, but the corn crop looks probably one of the best crops I've had going. Health-wise of the plant, you can walk through the field looking for western bean cutworm and not get cut all the heck from the leaves. They're that supple and they're that well nourished. We are looking for western bean cutworm. It's a nemesis for us down here, but so far so good. The counts are there, but not in extreme amounts yet.
Any issues?
Bigger problem is the black tar spot.
Yeah, tar spot.
The black tar spot, yes.
Ooh.
With all the moist conditions that we've had, we are very favorable to pathogens and to molds. And, I've seen more farmers on the bandwagon putting fungicide this year than I've ever seen. So,
yeah, I did an interview with Albert Tenuta a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about tar spot and how the environmental conditions lining up for tar spot to be a real challenge this year.
I think the difference, though, is education level, and Albert gets a real credit for his efforts to bring attention to it. When the tar spot hit a few years back real hard out by Pancourt, they really didn't know what hit them, and that was quite a baptism in fire. So we know what we're looking for. Farmers are largely educated, and with our Ontario Crop Advisor force that keeps growing, those folks are well aware. We've also got a great tool with Twitter. You can call it whatever you want, but as a farmer, it's really handy to see what's happening in other neighborhoods. And that lets me piece together just how fast I need to be out in which field. So,
yeah. Well,
so far so good.
Yeah. Hey, a clap there for Albert. You're right. He has really done Omen's service trying to make sure he has communicated a lot of the, best management practices and things to do when it comes to tar spot. There's always new issues coming to an area near you to try to take yield away from you. And tar spot's it's been around for a little bit, but it's definitely one of the newer ones that we need to be concerned about.
It's becoming a little bit more prevalent. And once the spores are in the soil, they don't dissipate, they don't freeze. Plus, we're the happy recipient of our American cousins in the prevailing winds. So, yeah, some of those spores get delivered to us airmail. So,
yep, we give them Canadian geese, and they've given us tar spot. I'm not sure that was a fair trade.
That's fair. Yes.
So, how in terms of activity on the farm? You're kind of in a holding pattern right now, or what are you doing? Because soybeans they are what they are, and the corn's grown. But what are you working on?
The spraying is what's going on, and while I'm not taking a high boy in, I have a neighbor doing my crop for me. There's other things to prepare and get ready, and we could be into a fast harvest. We never know what's going to happen here. Now, soybeans, as an interesting twist, I was lucky enough to have Adrian Vard out last week to do some plot trials on the field with the drone. So we're doing some foliar fertilizer applications on the soys to try and see what the different mixes will have in effect for pushing some soybean flower development. So. And a number of neighbors saw it going on and stopped. It was kind of funny to see the spectacle out there. So,
And you're doing that with the drone?
Yeah. We wanted to try out the technology. I've seen it. I've watched it on others. And this year I was lucky enough to be able to get them to come by, and we did a small field just for giggles. But it really does prove out how useful that technology will be. And maybe now that we have a new Minister of Agriculture federally, they can prioritize championing getting the hurdles out of the way so that we could perhaps put fungicide on sooner than later.
Yeah.
Right now they're prohibited from herbicides and fungicides, but you get a wet year like this would be a godsend to have a drone as another option.
Do you see the change in Ag Minister as a positive, Emery, then?
I see it as a change. And whenever there's a change, it's a new page. Mr. McCauley certainly has been around, and he has seen what's involved in the ag portfolio. I won't badmouth the predecessor, but I'll just say I'm hopeful that he will take this as an opportunity to step forward in a clean direction and see if we can do a little bit more for our farmers.
Definitely, we'll know all the stakeholders and, know the who's who in the zoo, so to speak. So that takes away that first 90 days of, getting them acquainted to everybody. There's an opportunity for him to hit the ground running. The question is how fast and what that actually looks like, right?
Well, the drone technology, there's a good one. It's non-political. He could show some leadership. It's a battery-powered drone. I think that checks the box on this government's objectives. And strategic farming for us, precision farming technologies are a good thing. And we're innovative. We have to be as farmers, or we're just not going to be here. So giving us the tools, or at least giving us the same tools that our competitors have, I think is probably the most important thing a minister can do.
A lot of technologies have come out that, especially as farm machinery has gotten larger and larger and larger, that really does provide, I guess, or speaks to, creates an advantage for people that are looking for scale, right? Size, right?
Certainly.
But when we talk about drones and autonomy, there's an opportunity there for farms of all sizes. And I can kind of argue the narrative too, that maybe this is an opportunity for medium to smaller farms to see kind of a real up and advantage when it comes to that kind of tech.
Even if you have a large scale farm, you still have a need to address the spots that aren't producing. And when you have certain areas on a field that can be easily remedied, and this technology was able to take dry urea up and address a wet spot in the cornfield. 2 acres that had just never got a good start with all the rain. They were late planted. And in the time it took to dump a couple 100 pounds of urea into the drone, that material was spread properly and done. So, that empowerment for farmers to be able to fix the problems precisely, I think that's really what it comes down to. You can always get a bigger drone down the road. I'm sure they will eventually give us a green light, but it's the painstaking task of waiting for our politicians to catch up.
Emery, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Farmer Rapid Fire. All the best, team. We'll check in with you later on in the year, okay?
Safe harvest, everybody.
Absolutely. Safe harvest indeed. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with more of the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
Did you know that Pioneer now has a full lineup of Enlist E3 soybeans? Take a look at Pioneer brand Enlist E3 soybeans for the highest yield potential and for the best agronomic package and herbicide trait options. From the lab to the field, Pioneer brand Enlist E3 soybeans are the best in beans, period. Ask your local Pioneer representative about Enlist E3 beans.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
And we take the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada to Killarney, Manitoba. We're talking to Aubrey Yule. Aubrey, welcome back to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Shaun?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Okay, how are your crops looking, though?
Really dry. They had good moisture to get going, but we haven't had enough rain since. So we needed a good inch a couple weeks ago. Didn't get it, so they're probably just below average. Probably is what I'm hoping.
Yeah, just kind of holding on, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's been some systems kind of go around us and past us, but they kind of dissipate by the time they get over here. So it's kind of, how she's going.
Yeah. Now, and like you said, there has been some good rain in Manitoba, right?
Yeah. Like north of us about an hour, Brandon and north of there, even probably at least to Russell, where I went to a wedding a couple weeks ago. The crops look phenomenal, so they'll be happy there. But yeah, south of Brandon and within our 100K kind of area, it's definitely dry.
And what about south of you as you go, like, because you're reasonably close to the North Dakota Manitoba border. So as you go south, do you know, does it change too far down?
I don't know. I haven't been that way, but I would assume it's similar. It's had a lot of spotty rains this year, so it's kind of could be either way.
Kind of the weather lottery.
Yeah, exactly. But we're just kind of grateful for the moisture early on, so just go with that. And Dad's out swathing right now, so we're going to be harvesting sooner than later here.
Okay, what's he swathing?
Barley.
Okay. So you'll get a good idea here fairly soon. How has the dryness in this part of the growing season, how has that impacted some of your agronomic decisions? Like, say, fungicide, for example.
Well, we sprayed the wheat with fungicide because there was still moisture and humidity laying around, but then everything started drying up. So I sent a pedal test in to, I think, the labs in Winnipeg, and it came back with 2.5% of sclerotinia in the petals. So that was a no-go on spraying it. So we would have saved money on fungicide, but it usually means your crop's probably not gonna go as well either. So
yeah,
it's kind of
it's that balance, right? You don't want disease, but you need a little bit of disease to say that you got some yield out in the field.
Yeah, like if there's humidity, it means you got moisture, so it's kind of a good thing. But yeah, so that's kind of what's going on. So yeah, like I said, we would have saved money on the actual spray and got an extra week off of farming potentially because of, like usually it would take a week or almost 2 weeks to do that spraying. So that was kind of nice. Spent more time with the family at the lake and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. We're going to get into it right away, and hopefully the yields are decent.
So when you get harvesting, talk to us about the harvest logistics. What does the crew look like? How do you line everybody out? What do you do typically during harvest?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm working on being more organized because other years I feel like it just hits and I'm not ready and I'm scrambling. So this year I wrote out a long list of things I need to fix and things I need to clean and get organized, and kind of when to text the hired guys, because we got a couple of retired guys that will come and drive combine while I'm trucking and that kind of thing. So just trying to be more organized than other years. So I feel like I'm there, but as soon as you hit the field, there's always something that you feel like you're missing. I know my dad just texted me about fire extinguishers because of how dry it is. So I'm going to drive around looking I think I've got one in the farm here somewhere, or a spare one, I mean. So we've got one for each combine right now, and I filled the water truck half full of water, so it should be good in case something happens, but we're just trying to be proactive here.
Yeah, and sometimes just writing those things out can help with the sort of the anxiety of all the things that have to happen. And then there's the satisfaction of crossing stuff off the list. There's right. There's that part about it. So when you get into harvest, will you typically be in the combine, or talk about how you line out the crew a little bit?
We've got, I think my brother-in-law is going to run the cart. He's because he's pretty quick, and you got to be on the ball for that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna have my dad in one of the combines because he knows combines really well and how to set them and all that jazz. And then we've got two retired guys that kind of take turns coming out here, and then one of them will run the other combine. So that'll be kind of our crew. I guess I'm trucking, so that's kind of the layout of our crew.
So with you trucking, kind of going back and forth to the yard, that you kind of become sort of like almost like a captain, so to speak, in trying to make sure everything keeps going. Is that kind of how you look at it?
Yeah, it feels like the cart or the truck guy is usually the captain. It's often good to have somebody that can fix in the cart as well. So if something breaks down, you've got that guy floating around with some tools. So, I like to be in the cart or the truck usually. And my dad and I are the only ones with our Class A1, so we're kind of limited in truckers.
I think some people look at the cart and they think, like, I know I made this mistake where I was like, I think the grain cart would be an awesome job. But then I talk to people that drive the grain cart and they're like, that job sucks because you never ever stop and you're bouncing across the field and you're like, you got the combine driver saying, where are you? You got the trucker saying, hurry up. Everybody's all over you.
It's true. You got to be on your game. If you're not busy, it's your crop is not good, basically. So you want to be busy, but at the same time, by day 5, you're exhausted.
Yeah. Well, those combine drivers creep through the field, right? It's kind of it's sort of weird when you think about it, because the combine driver's barely moving. He's just creeping. And then you got the grain cart guys zipping all over the place. And then, of course, the truckers trying to manage the logistics of getting out back to unloading and getting back and, not making sure when he stops for snacks at the house, he's not taking too long and all those kinds of things. It's funny.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very excited for this year. We picked up another section of dirt to rent, so we got a bit more going on, so it'll be fun.
Yeah, well, you know what, and that exactly right there, that Aubrey, I think that's the kind of attitude you got to have. It's going to be stressful. It never goes how you think it's going to go, because Mother Nature has an influence on that too. But you got to keep that kind of outlook. It's going to be fun.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Aubrey, thanks so much for joining us here this week on the Farmer Rapid Fire. All the best to you, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Shaun.
The part I didn't get into, Aubrey, there is like, it's going to be fun, but I find how people line out their crews and the logistical challenge of harvest. And do you rotate jobs? Do you stay in the same job? How do you make it so everybody continues to push those long hours? And then there's also, like, what we didn't get into is kind of the conflict that can happen in terms of what, where should we go next? What, who's doing what? It's, it's a family farm, baby. And it's good experiences for all. And it really is where the time of the year where you really are able to, you're putting the crop in the bin. You work so hard through the growing season to do it. You work hard, you get through the season and all the variables that are thrown at you, and you go through harvest, you get it in the bin. You got to take care of it while it's in the bin. It's not over yet, but you've really, you sort of take a bit of a deep breath. Once that crop is off, you take a deep breath. And this is really, I think, for a lot of farmers, their favorite time of the year, and where a lot of the memories are created, I think, in terms of those in-field meals and all that kind of stuff, and time together as a family to do the harvest. It's a big deal. It really, really is a big deal. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more of the Farmer Rapid Fire here on RealAg Radio, brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. Timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
And we continue the Farmer Rapid Fire brought to you by Pioneer Seeds Canada. Make sure you go to pioneer.com/Canada to find out more. And now we are in Assiniboia, Saskatchewan, and we're talking to Scott Hepworth. Hey, Scott, how's it going?
Not too bad, Sean.
Okay, fill us in. How are those crops looking? I know you're driving through the countryside. Give us an update.
They're looking, I would say, a little bit better than they did a couple of weeks ago, but they're still not very good. The pulses are hanging on the best, and it kind of looked the best all year. But the cereal crops were definitely damaged and never did recover. So some are okay and some are not okay.
Now, is that due to dryness?
Yeah, I guess dryness at the wrong time. We started off the season with some timely rains, and all crops got off to an excellent start. But then we hit a dry spell, and I don't think the cereal crops were able to root fast enough, and they went backwards quicker than I've ever seen them go backwards. You could watch them fail by the day. Yeah. So it was kind of disappointing after getting such a good start with some potential. They went backwards really quick.
Yeah, we saw this last week in the Saskatchewan Crop Report. Pretty much exactly this. We've just seen this slide, and it's really disappointing. And you're right about the establishment of those roots. When you start off decent and then that moisture doesn't continue, that's a problem for those plants. It's almost like you'd like the reverse. So we'd rather start out kind of on the drier side, and then we get the moisture once we've established that deeper root zone. It's just a disappointing year for Saskatchewan, it seems like.
Yeah, we've seen this before, but this year in the large part of southern Saskatchewan, anyways, that I visited, it was just one of the best starts we've seen for a long time, and it was certainly disappointing to see it go the other way so quickly.
Yeah. So why do you think the pulses are kind of hanging on a little bit better?
Well, our lentils, I guess I can speak about. They were almost at a point of too much moisture at one time. They were going backwards, pretty quick, in fact, and they kind of stalled out. And I'm not really sure. Maybe some timing was part of that, but they were able to root and hold on, and they've gone through the summer quite well. And it's been a pretty good year for pulses too. A little bit of stress early on, and we haven't had a lot of heat until recently, so they were able to go through their cycle quite well.
And you add on top of it, the Rough Riders can't seem to win a game. Like it's one thing on top of another, it seems, in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, we're in a drought in a few different ways in this province.
Well, they did beat Edmonton, which is back in early July. I'm looking at the scoreboard here right now. They beat Edmonton 12-11 by 1 point. So that's skating by.
Yeah, I had some optimism in the year at that point still too.
Oh man. Okay, how's the machinery run this year? Have you had any challenges at all?
No, seeding went quite well for us. It was a little bit later start than we're used to, but so far everything has ran well, and I hope the combines do the same thing here shortly.
Do you have a high clearance sprayer?
I do, yes.
Yeah. Could you ever go back to a pull type?
Oh, no, I can't say I would as my main machine. I will say I've given it some thought before. And even recently with the price of high clearance sprayers today. Yeah. But we've been doing so much grasshopper spraying this year, a lot, 4 or 5 passes throughout the year from herbicide to grasshoppers to desiccation. I just spend too much time in it on my farm to want to go back to a full type sprayer. I started at a full type sprayer, and I've never really looked back too hard.
Yeah. I don't know, and it'd be interesting to see how all this data shakes out. But, we used to spend most of our time in the tractor, right? And we had maybe that tractor that pulled a whole bunch of different implements through the growing season. And now it just seems like we spend a great deal of it sitting in a sprayer. Have you looked at the hours of your tractors versus combine versus sprayer? How much more time is spent in a sprayer?
Well, it definitely depends on the year, but I would say it's our highest piece of machinery used a year, without a doubt. I mean, even in these dry years, we've been doing so many applications for grasshoppers that what we didn't use for fungicide, we've used the same hours for grasshoppers. So I would say year in, year out, that's my most used piece of equipment.
One of the worst years for grasshoppers you can remember, or any context of that?
No, we've been battling them at our farm for 3 years, and I'd say this was better than the last three for sure. I don't know if they've just moved a little bit north. I know we're struggling more than we are, but this year wasn't as bad as last year, which was nice. But, you still have to be on top of them. There was a lot of boundaries being done. It was a little more tricky this year with the early hatch and not being able to use Lambda. Yeah. You had to wait a little bit longer to use some different chemistries. So that made it a bit more challenging this year, but we did have a quick start to our crop and got some foliage there. We're able to use some different chemicals later on, but they've been a challenge. They've done some damage. They'll be back next year, but not biblical proportions like I've seen elsewhere.
Oh, yeah. Some people have sent me photos, Scott. It's crazy. It's like you said, it's like biblical proportions. Like you just look at the front of your grill of your vehicle, and it's like small sparrows hitting the car. It's just brutal.
Yeah, I'm driving today, and you can definitely tell where they're worse. It almost sounds like heavy rain at times.
Yeah,
and I'll be pulling over quickly to wash the windows. But yeah, I don't know. They seem to move around. They're kind of like whack-a-mole at times, and I hope we get some favorable weather to end this cycle for them, because they're no fun.
Not at all. And like you said, we were losing some tools because the Lambda Psi issue is an example. I'm actually a little bit surprised we haven't heard more about people saying, hey, here you go. We can't use this product and now we're challenged. Like it's kind of been a bit of a disconnect. I thought we would hear more about that during the growing season. We'll have to see if that happens after the growing season, once kind of farm meeting season really kicks into gear. So you said you're all ready for harvest? Combine's ready to go?
Yeah, I think so. We have 10 days likely before we hit the field, so I still have time, right? If they're not.
Yeah.
But I think they're in shape to hit the field soon.
And do you typically get to spend all the time in the combine seat, or how do you kind of decide on what that harvest crew, how that kind of looks?
Yeah, my dad and I typically run the harvesters. And then we have a guy that's been trucking for us for 12 years. And then the past few years, it's always kind of been, that last minute find of the grain cart driver, which has always been a challenge. And I'm still looking for somebody to fill that spot this year. Luckily, our yield is going to be down, so it's not as much of a panic, but that's typically how we do it. So always looking for a grain cart driver this time of year.
Any mini competitions between you and your dad in terms of who can get the most throughput in a year driving those machines, or is it just there no games like that?
Oh, my dad and I are usually playing games out there. I don't know if we intend on it or not, but there's some healthy competition out there, I would say.
I like it. That passes the days. I like it very, very much. Well, hey, Scott, thank you so much for joining us here today on the Farmer Rapid Fire. All the best to you, and we'll chat with you again in the coming months.
Okay, thanks, Shaun.
Let's wrap up today's show with a little bit of top ag news stories of the day. Now that we've talked to our farmers, Nutrien's woes mount as fertilizer giant slashes capital expenditures, slashes profit forecast again. This according to a story in the Globe and Mail. So Nutrien is indefinitely suspending plans to ramp up its potash production, cutting its capital expenditure, and reducing its profit forecast yet again as a prolonged slump in the global fertilizer market takes its toll on the Canadian giant. Saskatoon-based Nutrien announced late Wednesday that it is reducing its 2023 adjusted net earnings per share guidance to roughly about $4.72 a share, compared with around $6.50 a share in May. The fertilizer company had already warned last month that its profit forecast would likely be soon pared back after it was forced to cut production at one of its mines owing to the inability to export potash out of the Port of Vancouver amid the strike by the International Longshore and Warehouse Union. Nutrients exports were curtailed in the second quarter by continuing problems at the terminal in Portland, Oregon. That facility was knocked out of potash service after a structural failure with its conveyor system in May. Ontario sheep farmers announced license fee increase. So the Ontario Sheep Farmers Board has announced that a license fee, sometimes called the checkoff, will increase from $1.80 to $2.20 plus applicable taxes per live animal sale effective October 1st. The increase in fee in the first 13 it's the first increase in fee in 13 years. OSF says the change is important for the future success of the organization, says implementing aspects of its 5-year strategic plan, building strength for a better future. Oil is on course to post its best month since war broke out in Ukraine, thanks to a stronger narrative surrounding global demand and supply cuts by key producers Saudi Arabia and Russia. West Texas Intermediate crude prices have jumped 16% to over $81 a barrel in July. The Bank of America revoked its forecast for a recession, becoming the first large Wall Street bank to officially reverse its call. Economists pointed to low unemployment and easing price pressures as key to the change. Quote here from the bank saying, recent incoming data has made us reassess our prior view that a mild recession in 2024 is most likely outcome for the U.S. economy. Growth in economic activity over the past 3 quarters has averaged 2.3%. The unemployment rate has remained near all-time lows, and wage and price pressures are moving in the right direction. So as we tie this to what happens with interest rates, does that mean that the Federal Reserve and Bank of Canada, central banks, have to continue to raise rates to try and because the economy is much more resilient? Or is this a sign that, okay, it's going to be a mild recession, we can back off here? I don't understand totally the fundamentals of that, but it's the soft landing. That's how I would describe what Bank of America is saying there. Yield 10 Bioscience, an agricultural bioscience company, has announced positive results in the first field test of a stacked herbicide trait in camelina. These proprietary stacked HT camelina varieties developed by Yield 10 demonstrate tolerance to the application of an over-the-top herbicide for weed control, as well as tolerance to Group 2 herbicide soil residues. So that's important. So camelina, big push when it comes to things like biofuels, for sure. Renewable diesel, sustainable jet aviation fuel, things like that. Now, when we talk about regulation and regulations we don't need, probably a lot of people would come up with what's happening in California with Proposition 12. Well, the Wall Street Journal has a story talking about how the California law threatens to help drive up bacon prices. Now we're getting serious. Bacon prices could soon start heating up, according to the Journal. Wholesale prices for the pork belly, the cut of meat used to make bacon, have surged this summer, nearly tripling since the start of June after hitting a multi-year low in May. Pork belly prices were at $2.15 a pound on Wednesday, just shy of their highest level since last August. The run-up could soon pressure restaurants and supermarkets that have been stepping up bacon promotions. Helping drive the price surge is an animal welfare law in California requiring pigs to be given at least 24 square feet of pen space for their meat to be sold in the state, which accounts for roughly 15% of U.S. pork production. And that's not just pork produced in California. That's if you want to export, if you want to move product into California from other states or from countries like Canada. This is what has a lot of people really concerned. After facing years of legal challenges, Proposition 12 was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court in May and went into effect on July 1st. Pork producers initially held off on buying new products after the Supreme Court ruling because they were unsure about how the law would be implemented. And quote here from Goldman Sachs saying, you had processors that didn't want to buy products for their freezers if it wasn't Proposition 12 compliant. So, yeah. Oh, also, the Bank of England has raised interest rates 25 basis points to a 15-year high of 5.25% on Thursday, aiming to control inflation. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Of course, you can find us across all the different social media platforms. And you can also call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Big shout out to our sponsor, the Farmer Rapid Fire, Pioneer Seeds Canada. Thank you so much for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. And we'll, of course, chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.